You know those days where you get off of work and it's already dark outside, or maybe you're waking up in the morning and the sun isn't shining? Thousands of people admit to feeling down or depressed when daylight hours and days get shorter. In this episode of a Healthier Michigan podcast, we're talking about the winter blues, or more specifically, if there are any potential cures. Welcome to a Healthier Michigan podcast. I'm your host, Chuck Gaidica, and every other week, we'll dive into topics that help us lead our healthiest life, covering everything from nutrition to mental health, physical health, social media trends, and all of those things that may impact our wellness. Today, we're joined again by Josh McCullough, who's a senior analyst, health analyst for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, to help us better understand why do our bodies crave light and how it helps us to understand why we need light in the first place. Josh, welcome back. Good to see you.
Likewise. Thank you for having me back again.
Yeah, sure thing. We've got a couple things working against us here in Michigan. First, we just know, we're into this season of shorter days. We got darker mornings. Then if you add cloud cover, which seems to set in November in Michigan and sometimes doesn't disappear until May, we're wanting to understand this idea of night and how it seems to come much quicker, and then how we're getting less sunlight and why that affects us. So why do we need sunlight, and what does it do for us?
Well, sunlight produces vitamin D in our bodies, which are important for all sorts of medical things, bone health, immune system health, that kind of thing. But it's also really important for mental health as well. It helps release serotonin, which is the happy chemical in a sense, and helps keep our mood stable, helps reduce anxiety and depression. It also helps us sort of regulate our internal clock and sleep patterns. So folks may be noticing these days with those, earlier dark evenings that maybe they're tired quicker, or maybe their bodies are used to being up a little bit longer, so they're not tired and ready to go to bed when they should be. Now, I'm one of those people that, I usually go to bed around 9 o'clock, and these days there's times where I just don't feel tired, even though I've had a full day.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's times where I wake up in the middle of the night for no particular reason. I have a tough time getting back to sleep. So it's very common for folks. Like I said, I'm one of them that happens to, regardless of the seasons, but especially right now.
Well, with what you're willing to share with us there, if you're having trouble getting back to sleep, but it's already dark, is that part of the connection to the regulation of melatonin and, the happy chemicals in our bodies and the hormones? Is that part of that? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. If it's kind of like a nasty rolling snowball that if one thing gets thrown off, everything else will go along with it. So again, it's not that I've got something that's troubling me on my mind or something that keeps me up. I'll wake up and I'm just up. I'm not feeling tired. Maybe my body is kind of feeling a little tired, but my brain is awake with nothing. It's silly songs or a strange question or anything. It just I'm up. And it can be difficult to then relax enough to get back to sleep. So again, that can all come from the days, the light that we get during the days is shorter. We're not getting as much vitamin D from that sunlight to help produce the melatonin, help produce the serotonin, keep the whole system running as it should.
What can we find? What kind of tools can we find that help us deal with this idea of daylight hours changing and our physical and mental health, our mood maybe shifting a bit?
Part of it may be a gradual schedule adjustment. Maybe if we're not, I'm like 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock at night, I'm ready to go to bed. So if I'm not feeling ready to go to bed, maybe I don't force it. Maybe I try 9:15, 9:30. Maybe it takes some setting back. Or maybe if I'm feeling tired around 8:30, I don't need to say, well, I go to bed at 9, so I'm going to stay up this half hour. Listen to our bodies is one of those important things. Maybe 15, 20 minutes shift either way can be helpful. Another big thing is what we generally call sleep hygiene. And this is a big thing that we looked at back when I was in graduate school is what are all the things that we can do sort of behaviorally, environmentally, to make sure that we're telling our body it's time to sleep. And that's all we're supposed to do. Keeping a consistent schedule, a calming bedtime routine, maybe we watch something on TV a little relaxing, nothing too engaging or too kind of scary or frightening before we go to bed. What we do in bed is very important. Dim those screens. If we're people that are on our phones, on our tablets, oftentimes we can get an app, or there may be a built-in kind of blue light filter or a dimming of the light, so we're not blasting our eyes with light that's telling us to be awake. Don't do work in bed. People may be on their laptops and I just want to finish this last report. I want to get this spreadsheet done and do whatever. That's a signal that tells our body and our brains to be awake, not to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Maybe a gentle noise. I use this a gentle noise machine, just something that helps kind of not too loud, not too quiet, just kind of helps put a little bit of background noise there to kind of keep my brain unfocused, or maybe a soothing podcast, something like that. Something that may occupy our ears but not our minds a little bit. Other things we can do are making sure that we get some sort of regular exercise, help wear our bodies out a little bit. Not too close to when we go to bed, because sometimes it can be a little stimulating. We may need to ask our primary care doctor about maybe vitamin D supplements. Not all vitamin D supplements are created equal, so asking our doctor which ones are good would be helpful.
I've heard and I've also seen advertised these things that I guess generally are called happy lights. To me, some of them almost look like strings of mini Christmas lights, and I'm kind of suspect. Like, really, that those little LEDs or whatever they are going to do me some good? What's your view on this idea of something that's going to mimic natural light for us?
Well, so again, it's a similar sort of thing where not all are created equal. So what you want to do is they can definitely work. Let me start off with that. They can definitely work. They're supposed to help mimic natural light. And why? Well, nothing is an exact one-to-one replacement for the sun. They can get closer, certainly closer than the bulb we have in our lamp or that's in my fan above me, things like that. They operate on specific wavelengths to help kind of recreate sunlight, to help trigger that vitamin D response in our bodies. So they're not ultraviolet light. So that's an important thing to know. So we're not going to get a sunburn if we use one.
Yeah, it's not a tanning bed. Yeah.
It's not a tanning bed. I know a lot of people back in the day used to use tanning beds as kind of a replacement. Those come with their own risks and short term and long term. I'm very fair skinned, so that wouldn't work for me. I'd burn in a heartbeat. But we also want to make sure if we're taking any medications prescribed by our doctors, check with them first, because some medications may react differently to certain light. So we want to make sure that we're not going to, mess with the effectiveness of what we're taking, which would be its own kind of problem there. The Mayo Clinic, which is a well-respected medical institution, recommends getting one that produces as little ultraviolet light as possible. So they'll all produce some ultraviolet light, but it's not a straight ultraviolet light producer like a tanning bed, like you said.
Yeah.
So, and what they do is they don't provide vitamin D. So it's not like it's directly coming from the sun, but what they can do is help to, help our bodies kind of fool it in a sense, to help kind of mimic the effects of the sunlight, to help do that. So they can be helpful. I think that they would be most helpful as part of a regimen rather than the one thing that we rely on.
Well, that's really interesting. So back to you again. So you've got one of these things. Is there a time of day you use it, or when you feel kind of down or blue, do you turn it on? How do you use it in your life? How does it work?
So I would try to use it on a routine basis, kind of in the morning.
Okay.
I think that a lot of people are kind of more sluggish in the morning. Maybe we need that first cup of coffee during the day or whatever. Not too close to bedtime, certainly, because again, we don't want to do anything that's going to tell our body it's time to be awake. So in the morning or early afternoon is probably best. And whatever we can do to build it into an existing routine, I think is also good. Maybe we set a reminder on our phone to use it, or a reminder in our calendar, hey, use it for a half hour. If I sit down for that cup of coffee to relax before I get into the work day, maybe do it then. Anything that we can do to kind of pair it with something that we're already doing kind of reduces the likelihood that we're going to forget about it, so that we've purchased this thing that we're not going to use.
Yeah, and I guess that's a really interesting way to look at this, that you've purchased something that you're going to use. And I would argue that even if there's a placebo and you turn it on and 30 minutes later you feel great and the light really didn't do it, maybe it's worth it anyway. You know what I'm saying?
As long as it works. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yes. I remember back in graduate school, we looked at that, and, placebo effect has to do better than about 25% of people showing improvement. I mean, it can be a very, very powerful thing. So even if it's something that, we can't get into the, hard and fast chemistry of things, if we think that it's working and we build it into our routine and we say, hey, I'm feeling better, maybe that's fine too. That's legit. It's a very powerful thing.
And I've seen a recommendation, this is going to get a little wonky, but 10,000 lux. Are you familiar with whatever kind of light you have or what those even Mayo Clinic recommendations might be?
That's the recommendations, the 10,000 lux.
Okay.
Anything less may not be effective. Anything more might be sort of overkill, so to
Okay.
speak. But that's what I've seen recommended by the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah, because we all go through this season of buying things and beyond, and we're inundated with catalogs, and there's always something,
Oh,
there's the cheaper gadget and there's the slightly more expensive gadget. So we all have to
mhm.
discern, which way to go. And so that's good to know some of those numbers to kind of zero
Yeah.
in.
And as you start doing a search, you'll be inundated with ads, with
Yeah.
all sorts of varying qualities and things like that. So yeah, important to ask an expert.
I want to double back for a real quick sec on vitamin D, because I've never thought that if I go out and get a new vitamin D, or I want to get a B plus or a B12, whatever it is, that I'm going to necessarily reach out and contact my doctor. But you said something really interesting, that all vitamin D isn't created equal. Is that D3 versus some other D? Is there a specific D that I could still follow up with my doc? But what do you have a recommendation, or we really should reach out to our doctor for that?
I really would reach out to your doctor. And part of the
Okay.
reason is because supplements are not regulated the same way that
Yeah.
medications are. So if I go and I get a bottle of extra strength Tylenol, I could go and to the other part of the world and get another bottle of extra strength Tylenol. It would be identical. But between manufacturers, when it comes to supplements, there's more or less,
Mm-hmm.
sort of of the good stuff in there. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
So our doctors would be a good uh, um, source of information of which is good, which is quality. I mean, they all have different labels and qualities on them, but you could go into your pharmacy right now and you'll see multiple makers
Oh my gosh, yeah.
vitamin
It's
D.
crazy.
There's Tylenol, then there's generic Tylenol, and that's kind of about it. And they have such strict regulations when it comes to how much, how it's made, the quality, the purity, being tested, et cetera, et cetera. Again, there are different bodies that will test supplements and verify these sort of claims to how good they are, but they don't all have to follow them.
And I guess the frequency becomes a thing too, right? I mean, to your point about an over-the-counter pain reliever, certain
Mhm.
ones you take them every day, multiple times a day, and somewhere down the road, if you did that every day, you could wind up with an ulcer, let's say. So, I mean, you need to
Yeah.
understand how often are you doing this, and if it's once a day, you've got some
Mhm.
underlying condition or medications, going to see the doc is good advice.
And as you say, an underlying condition, there may be something else that a vitamin's not going to touch.
Yeah,
With
yeah,
no
yeah.
disrespect to people who want to do things without medications, if someone has a sort of major condition, a major depression, major
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, these sort of things, vitamins in and of themselves may not touch it. You may need to go up a level, seek help from a therapist, maybe get on some sort of medication
Yeah.
that your doctor can prescribe to you to help get over that hump. If folks are kind of trying supplements, vitamin D, whatever, and it's just not working, maybe or these kind of happy lights and all the over the counter things we're trying aren't working. Maybe time to level up and see, is there something else going on that these just in and of themselves wouldn't touch.
Well, so last tips for us, Josh. What other things, if any, do you have, or a little wrap up of some of the great stuff you've talked about already?
And sleep hygiene is a big one. Make sure that we're setting up our bedroom and our bed to be a signal for our body to go to sleep, not to be awake.
Yeah.
Talking with our doctor about what good options might be in terms of supplements, happy lights, medications if needed, seeing a therapist if we need to.
Yeah, all really good stuff. I don't know that I have the right wavelengths, but hang on, Josh. I'm soaking it in.
Yeah, we'll just turn it up a few notches and see what
Yeah.
happens.
Hey, it's good to see you again. Thanks so much for your
Likewise,
time.
thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, sure thing. Josh McCullough, who's Senior Health Analyst for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you found something you can take with you and maybe can help you feel a little better starting today. Isn't that cool? That's one of those things, just get a little sunshine and maybe that'll help turn the corner for you. Thanks for listening to A Healthier Michigan podcast. It's brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. If you like the show and you want to know more, you can check it out at ahealthiermichigan.org/podcast. You can leave us a review or rating on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Please give us a rating, share the podcast, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think or what you think we should talk about in an upcoming episode. We'd love to hear from you. Subscribe and favorite wherever you listen. We hope we gave you a tip or two today to keep you healthier and maybe a little sunshiny brighter, huh? Until next time, I'm Chuck Gaidica.